I miss the days when games could just be fun and you didn't have to feel like you were taking on a second-time job every time that you, or not second-time job, you don't want to be like a second full-time job. Anytime that you try to start playing a new game, because nowadays when you start, back in the day when you wanted to play a game, you just dive in, like maybe, I don't know, maybe say your main game was like MW3, but, Halo was like a side game for you, or maybe vice versa, or like, you made one game, but you like playing with your friends on the other one every now and then, or maybe it was like Battlefield 3 for you. You main Call of Duty, but then when your friends are on, you go and play a couple matches of Halo, then you go back to Call of Duty, or, vice versa. Nowadays, every time that you go into the game, not only does every single game look the same with the exact same shop layout, with the exact same battle pass layout, with just the exact same confusing menu layouts, I should say. That's a whole other conversation. What happened to intuitive menus? Why do they all have to be so confusing now? Why? So that you accidentally stumble upon the shop and hopefully buy something by accident? Or maybe just, because you can't keep your wallet closed and, they know that there's consumers like that and they prey upon them? I mean, sure, that is more of a self-control issue, but at the same time, I mean, the companies aren't really trying to help the situation, and, they'll do anything to milk these players for their money. Seriously, like, every time you boot up a game nowadays, like, you can't just do what you did back in the day, where, like, you might occasionally pop into one game and just play for a bit. Like, no, when you play the game, you almost have that, like, no matter what game it is, you almost have that feeling where every time you see that battle pass, every time you see the FOMO seasonal events, you're just like, oh, now that I'm playing the game, should I just, and again, this does go back to a self-control thing of like, well, you don't need to interact with all that stuff. You can just dive in and then hop out. But it's just the fact that all of that predatory stuff is there in the first place. It's even more weird when you have some of these games where it's like, okay, there is all of this FOMO content and there's all this stuff to interact with. And in one way, it's good. It's like, well, what are you complaining about? The fact that there's more content and there's more to interact with and there's more stuff to miss out on? Like, no, that's not my point. Because funnily enough, in most of these live service games, the content is so lacking and there's like barely any content there, or there's not as much as there should be or as there used to be, yet there's still like all this FOMO stuff in place. But though the thing is, like, most of the FOMO stuff, it's tied to like cosmetics and camos and stuff like that. So most times it's not even actually real content like maps and guns or other things like that. It's literally just like meaningless grinds where you're meant to grind the same content over and over again, which there is already lacking of, to give you like an artificial sense of content and grind and playtime and stuff in the game, even though that there's really not anything and all you're doing is running around getting kills while sliding or ADSing or quickscoping just because that's what the weekly challenge says to do. Another thing that I mentioned before is it's funny how the more that these companies try to implement these algorithms and strategies and all these different things like SBMM and FOMO events, and the more that they try to boost retention, the less that I care about maintaining retention with their game. Back in the day when they were just trying to make simple, fun games, I actually found myself playing their games way more and way more consistently just because I wanted to, rather than nowadays where there's a lot of live service games that I dive into and simply play just because, well, there's a FOMO event, so, I have to play now, otherwise I miss out on it. And then usually once that FOMO event is done, I just kind of hop out of the game and I don't play it until the next one. Whereas back in the day when it wasn't about the retention and the algorithms and the FOMO events, and they were simply just making fun games that were meant to be fun, I dive in, play it almost on a daily basis just because I simply wanted to. And then, hey, sometimes I would take a break for a couple of weeks because I wanted to go off and, maybe play another RPG, grind out a good solid like 30 to 50 hour Final Fantasy game or something like that, or go grind out like a, GTA Online for a couple of weeks or whatever. And I'd come back to their games and I'd keep grinding. I'd go for like Prestige Master in Black Ops 2, or, try to keep ranking up in Black Ops 3 Zombies. But nowadays it's just like, oh, hey, I did all my stuff for this season. The Battle Pass is done. I hit max rank, and there's nothing else to do for the next 50 days, so I'll see you next season.